we're going to talk about the lovely Miss Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Tulsi Gabbard has been widely smeared. So this is the theme here being propaganda. I wanted to do a kind of a little retrospective on Tulsi Gabbard and her political journey before I jump into another clip, because as you probably know, my take is in the current election cycle, the lesser of two evils is Donald Trump. And I have no shame in saying that. I'm not one of those people who's going to pretend like there isn't a difference. You know, there isn't a difference on certain things. Granted, you know, Israel being the big one. But I have receipts for this. So let's start by revisiting the career of Tulsi Gabbard, because it's an interesting ride. Okay. So we're going to start here with this video of Tulsi Gabbard back in 2016, young and fresh-faced Tulsi Gabbard, back when the world was a beautiful place still, and everything was so innocent and free.
I'm Tulsi Gabbard. I'm a soldier and a war veteran, and I'd like to share with you why I'm endorsing Bernie Sanders for president and commander-in-chief.
Joe Rogan has said this. I'll stop interrupting, but war veteran, woman, person of color, she checks literally all the boxes of the perfect Democratic candidate. Here's why she's not the Democratic candidate.
No one understands peace more than those who've experienced war. In Iraq, I served in a medical unit where every single day I saw firsthand the human cost of our military intervention. The cost of war is not just money that's spent on planes and tanks and guns. The cost of war includes the lives and sacrifices of our nation's sons and daughters, our mothers and fathers that we send off to war. Bernie Sanders voted against the war in Iraq. He's been a strong champion for veterans in the Senate, ensuring that our veterans receive the care and benefits that they were promised and that they've earned. Senator Sanders led the bipartisan effort to pass the most comprehensive veterans legislation in decades, a landmark bill that guarantees our veterans have access to health care wherever they are in America. As president, Bernie Sanders will make sure that we meet the needs of every veteran, including dental care and mental health services, and he will fully restore the cuts made to military pensions.
This is a veteran talking veteran stuff.
Our choice is clear. We can vote for candidates who will engage America in more of these unnecessary wars of regime change, or we can vote for Bernie Sanders, who will use our precious resources to nation build right here at home while protecting and expanding our veterans' benefits. Please join me in supporting Bernie Sanders for president.
To nation build right here at home. Isn't that a radical idea? So let's keep going in this trajectory of Tulsi Gabbard here. This was the second big moment in the political career of Tulsi Gabbard. Here's where she resigns from the DNC.
Democratic National Committee Vice Chair has been at odds with her boss, DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, for months over the Democratic presidential debate schedule. Congresswoman, you're here because you have an announcement to make regarding your position at the DNC. Tell us.
Well, first of all, I am resigning from the DNC so that I can support Bernie Sanders for president. I'd like to tell you why. As a veteran and as a soldier, I've seen firsthand the true cost of war. I served in a medical unit during my first deployment, where every single day I saw firsthand the very high human cost of that war. I see it in my...
So one of the things I think is most interesting about this retrospective on Tulsi is the things she's saying don't change. She's been saying the same shit since 2016, since she first ran for president.
Friends who now, a decade after we've come home, are still struggling to get out of a black hole. I think it's most important for us as we look at our choices as to who our next commander-in-chief will be, is to recognize the necessity to have a commander-in-chief who has foresight, who exercises good judgment, who looks beyond the consequences, who looks at the consequences of the actions that they are looking to take before they take those actions, so that we don't continue to find ourselves in these failures that have resulted in chaos in the Middle East and so much loss of life.
But, you know, it was just a month ago, and this was sort of got us curious about. A month ago, you said you think the next commander-in-chief needs to have a, quote, military mindset. You said this.
That's Chuck Todd's gotcha question
During an interview on Fox News. Does Senator Sanders have a military mindset?
From what I've seen, from talking with him and from his record, he does. And what that military mindset means is you go through an analysis process as you're looking at potential courses of action that you're going to take, and how and when we use our military power. And just as importantly, when we don't use that military power, that military mindset says you have foresight. You look at what are the results, what are the consequences.
Listen to that answer. She just nails it. Like, what a smart, beautiful, like, just seems like a genuinely good person. So here's the next phase in Tulsi's evolution. This is Tulsi 2020. This is her campaign ad from 2020.
It's painful and disheartening to see how much divisiveness is being fomented by those who wish to tear us apart. We have people in positions of power who are not thinking about the well-being of the people and our planet. Where is that conversation about the needs of our people? Where is the conversation about peace? Every time we launch these interventionist regime change wars, it is not only our veterans who pay the price for that. Every single one of us pays the price. We have spent trillions of your taxpayer dollars to pay for these wars, taking those dollars away from our communities and our people who need them right here at home.
Sounds very similar to what she was saying in 2016, doesn't it?
We are the ones who have the power to make change. It takes every single one of our hands, our hearts, and our voices, motivated by this love and aloha, to take on those forces and those obstacles that can seem too great to overcome. There is no force more powerful than love. This is how we come together as Americans. This is why we
There is no force more powerful than
fight for the future that we hope will be so much brighter for those that we care about, for the country that we love.
And the next phase in Tulsi's political evolution after this one is Russia. Hillary Clinton suggests Russians are grooming Tulsi Gabbard for a third-party run. Is that a fact, Hillary? Former Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton said Thursday, the Russians are currently grooming a Democrat running in the presidential primary to run as a third-party candidate and champion their interests. The comment appears to be directed toward Hawaii Rep. Tulsi Gabbard, who has been accused of being a cozy with Russia in the past. I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who is currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate, Clinton said, speaking on a podcast with former Obama advisor David Plouffe. She's the favorite of Russia. Does anyone still buy that? Does anyone with a working mental faculty still buy the Russia shit? Like, it's really mind-boggling to me that anyone can take that seriously at this point. But let's keep going. Tulsi Gabbard, Hawaii Rep. Tulsi Gabbard suspends her presidential campaign and backs Biden. So this is 2020. Tulsi Gabbard, the Hawaii U.S. representative and Iraq war veteran who has stirred controversy within her own party, is suspending her bid for the White House. She has been one of only 3 candidates left in the race for the Democratic presidential nomination, despite only garnering 2 delegates. Gabbard made the announcement in a video posted Thursday morning and said it's clear that the Democratic primary voters have chosen former Vice President Joe Biden to be the person to take on Trump in November. In the video, she says she's offering her full support to Biden in his quest to bring our country together. So that's when we last heard from Tulsi. That's the next step in her political evolution. So here is the, I guess, step 4. How many steps is that? I'm not counting. Former presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard says she's leaving the Democratic Party. So she finally woke up and figured it out. Former Congresswoman and 2020 presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard has announced she's leaving the Democratic Party. When was this? This was from October 12th of 2022. So this is about 2 years ago. I could no longer remain in today's Democratic Party, she said on an episode of her podcast, which I think it was the first episode of her podcast, actually. That's how she launched it. It's now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness. So the wokeness part is a little bit new, but the rest is pretty consistent with what she's been saying all along. Gabbard additionally accused the party of stoking anti-white racism, being contemptuous toward religion and police, and driving the country closer to nuclear war. I don't agree with all of that, but for the most part, she's right. Gabbard was first elected to her native state of Hawaii's legislature in 2002 as a Democrat at the age of 21. She has identified as a Democrat ever since, she said. In 2012, Gabbard became the first Hindu and one of the first 2 female combat veterans elected to Congress. She began building a national profile during the 2016 election when she resigned from her post as vice chairperson of the Democratic National Committee to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders for president. She wouldn't play the game. She announced her own presidential run on CNN in January 2019, saying there is one main issue that is central to the rest, and that is the issue of war and peace. I'm going to give you 3 guesses what happens next in this timeline. And those 3 guesses are going to be anti-vax, Russia, or what's the third one? Anti-Semite. If you guess B, you guess correct. The GOP's new Russia-friendly campaign trail buddy, Tulsi Gabbard. This is from Politico, to a very respectable press outlet, as we all know. They say, she once drew Republican daggers for her tolerant comments about Vladimir Putin, but these days, many party players are embracing her as a Democratic dropout, despite the headaches it may bring them on Ukraine. So just like we were talking about with the German politicians all being united around Israel, like we have the same uniparty consensus on all of our wars too. Let's read a little bit of this. Republicans once slammed Tulsi Gabbard as a socialist seeking to appease dictators like Bashar al-Assad and Vladimir Putin. These days, much of the GOP is embracing her. Since the former Hawaii Democratic Congresswoman made a public show of her decision to leave the party last month, she has gone on to endorse several top Republicans in the run-up to next week's midterm elections. Some GOP candidates appearing with Gabbard, who previously defended Putin's rationale for invading Ukraine, have echoed Donald Trump's opposition to helping Kiev beat back Moscow. Just look at the fucking framing of this garbage. Republicans across the ideological spectrum are eagerly accepting Gabbard's endorsement and even hosting her for rallies in their home states, arguing her departure from the Democratic Party bolsters their view that it has moved too far to the left. But the GOP's unapologetic embrace, it's too far to the left, is still the extreme right for the Democrats. But the GOP's unapologetic embrace of Gabbard is particularly conspicuous as its leaders try to dispel the notion that they're not tough enough on Russia. Amid a sharp internal divide over aiding Ukraine, it also comes as questions mount over whether Republican-controlled House would continue to approve funding for Ukraine's defense and humanitarian needs as our country drowns in the remnants of a hurricane. I don't talk to her. This is old article. This is back from November 4th of 2022. I don't talk to her about which areas she's involved in, but I do think people are watching that and saying, okay, something's going on out there, said House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, the guy who was shot at by a Bernie supporter, supposedly, who recently took time off the campaign trail to appear on Gabbard's podcast and described her as a new close friend. Well, isn't that interesting? The GOP's political dalliance with Gabbard is only the latest sign of how quickly the party is shifting toward the America First foreign policy doctrine espoused by Trump. Even the party's more traditional defense hawks are justifying the public alignment with an early Bernie Sanders backer who has expressed views once considered heresy in the Republican Party. Isn't that interesting? This is in addition to the Tulsi's trajectory, this is also kind of showing you the party swap thing that I talk about all the time. Trotting out Gabbard could prove risky for a party that has spent much of Putin's months-long war on Ukraine playing political defense over Russia, with influential conservatives like Fox News' Tucker Carlson disrupting the party's efforts to project commitment to the Western coalition. Even Trump-skeptical Republicans like Rep. Nancy Mace of South Carolina have welcomed and touted Gabbard's support, if only to highlight the extremism of the Democratic Party. Nancy Mace also pro-choice Republican, as a woman who experienced sexual assault. After appearing earlier this year to boost Putin's belief that Ukraine's alignment, I love going back and reading these articles because they're just dripping with the most propagandistic, bootlicking language available. After appearing earlier this year to boost Putin's belief that Ukraine alignment with the West threatens Russia's security, Gabbard has since endorsed Republicans like J.D. Vance. This was 2 years ago, before J.D. Vance was a vice presidential nominee, which is interesting because it makes you wonder if Tulsi Gabbard didn't play a part in this selection. The Ohio Senate candidate, who has said he doesn't care what happens to Ukraine and recently echoed Trump's view that Ukraine should go to the negotiating table with Russia. How dare he? That notion has been rejected by the Ukrainian government, as it would likely require it to relinquish territory to Moscow. Now it's going to lose more. While Gabbard, and remember, this was 2 years ago. These guys were advocating for negotiations 2 years ago as the Democrats continued to escalate. While Gabbard has not formally joined the Republican Party, her stance isn't too far outside the GOP mainstream. Polling data shows Republicans growing increasingly wary of supporting Ukraine with weapons and economic aid, views once considered to be on the isolationist fringes of the GOP are becoming more accepted in the party. I love that. Isolationist fringes. What a Politico is like, should be called like Bootlickico or something. You know, it's just terrible. I don't know how they get away with such Orwellian language.